50798.
Okay, now we're going to get our speaker on a little early this week. So, our speaker is Andrew Janz, who is the Deputy District Attorney with the Fresno County District Attorney's Office. Andrew has prosecuted a number of high-profile cases against gang members, career criminals, and would-be murderers. So he's definitely out there to try to keep our community safe. He attended California State University Stanislaus, where he was awarded a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's degree in public administration. And after leaving Cal State Stanislaus, Andrew attended Southwestern Law School in Los Angeles, where he earned his law degree. He's a member of the Downtown Rotary Club, as was mentioned, and the Fresno County Prosecutors Association. He's married to Heather Walker Janz, who is a small business owner and past president of Central Valley chapter of California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. And I take it you have no children, but you have 2 dogs.
That's correct.
Well, come on up and let's hear more about it.
Thank you, Bruce, for the introduction, and Sharon for inviting me here today. And always good to talk to fellow Rotarians. Just a little bit more about my background, because I think it informs sort of my worldview and who I am as a person. I'm a son of immigrants. I grew up here in the Central Valley, and my parents were working class folks. I started school speaking English as a second language, and so I started a little bit behind some of my peers and sort of learning English along the way. My mom didn't speak any English when she came to this country, and as my dad was working, she would take care of me during the day, and so that's why I grew up speaking Thai as my first language. And I always like to tease people and say that I learned to speak English by watching Young and the Restless and soap operas. So that's sort of a little bit about my family background. Yes, I did attend Cal State Stanislaus, just an hour and a half to the north. I did get into Fresno State, but I had a decision between, I think, 2 pretty good schools, and I settled on Stanislaus because it was close enough to being home where I can come home and do laundry on the weekends, but like not close enough where my parents could sneak up and ring on my doorbell at my dorm. So I wanted a little bit of that distance, but I maintained my connection with the Central Valley and the community. I am married to my wonderful wife, Heather Janz. She's a small business owner. She has her own clinic here in the city of Fresno. She's a mental health therapist, so she provides a much needed service to our community, and she's really a leader in her own right, and she does a lot of work in our town in terms of mental health, and she's been an advocate for women and young girls, and is a big supporter of our local Girl Scouts. She and I apparently didn't have enough going on in our lives, both professionally and politically, so we decided to spice things up a little bit. We are expecting our first child. The doctors say any day now, so that is on my immediate horizon, and so if I just suddenly look at the manager of the people that work here, I do have some experience in managing people and budgets. When I was in my 20s, I was the president and CEO of a nonprofit organization that advocated for students. And during my time there, I managed a $2 million budget. We supervised anywhere between 15 and 30 people, depending on the time of year. It was a student advocacy group. At the same time, I was a budget officer for a statewide student organization that advocated on behalf of the 450,000 students that attend the California State University system, the largest public higher education institution in the world. Between 2007 and 2009, I was appointed by my university's president to sit on his budget advisory committee. We had budget oversight of a $100 million budget during a pretty tough time in California between 2007 and 2009, when there were deep cuts made to public education. During my time as student body president at California State University Stanislaus, I personally led the effort to promote and fund a student-led initiative that helped build a $15 million stadium. I was a primary planner in terms of budgeting and organizing the construction of this project. So that is a little bit about my management and budgeting experience. Bruce mentioned the fact that I have a master's degree in public administration. I spent 3 years of my life learning how to run a municipality like Fresno. One of my professors during my grad school program was President Obama's former Secretary of Defense and CIA Director, Leon Panetta. I mention him because his teachings stay with me to this day. He taught us about the importance of ethics and transparency in folks who want to have leadership positions in government. So that's so important to me, and his mentorship was important to me. In terms of my position at the DA's office, I can't overstate how much I love my job. It is so rewarding and fulfilling to go to work every single day knowing that I'm going to be an advocate for victims of some of the most horrendous and violent crimes that we see here in our community. There is nothing better than knowing that you are on the side of good, on the side that is there to preserve and protect our Constitution and to bring out truth and justice. It's just so important to me, and my work means the world to me. I think that tells you a little bit about my decision to run for mayor. That I am willing to sacrifice a job that I love and a career that I really don't want to walk away from to do what is, I think, in the community's interest. And putting my own personal issues aside and saying that I want to make a difference for this community. And I think it really takes a calling to put away sort of your own personal agenda to do what is ultimately right and what might ultimately jeopardize my ability to do my job as a prosecutor. And so being in this race means so much to me, so much more to me knowing that I am going to raise my daughter here in this city. And so I think right now we're at a crossroads in our community. We have a really unique opportunity. I think we have a city council that is willing to work with a mayor that is going to really push Fresno forward to better places, to be bigger and better than what we are now. And I really think that, like most voters in the city, we're stuck in a rut. We're stuck in sort of status quo territory. And I think that I bring a unique perspective in being somebody that hasn't worked on the inside, that hasn't been part of the political machine here in Fresno, to bring new ideas to the table and a fresh perspective in terms of leadership. So what is my vision for Fresno? Well, first of all, the number one issue, obviously, all across California, all across our community, no matter who you ask, if you're talking to a Democrat, or Republican, or Independent, is poverty and homelessness. It is the number one issue. And it's something that I personally care deeply about. It's something that I see every day in terms of my work as a prosecutor, people that are down on their luck, people that have mental health issues, people who don't have homes, get involved in the criminal justice system, and I have that interaction with them, and many of them we house in Fresno County Jail, and that is on the back of taxpayers. And so we have to do something about the poverty homelessness issue. Number one, I think we need to do a better job in terms of prevention. There are so many people here in our community and all across the state that are right on the verge of becoming homeless. And so like other big cities, we need to do more in terms of making sure that these folks have the protection when they fall in these circumstances, because most people, they're 1 or 2 paychecks away from losing everything, and my family's been in that position, and so I know what that's like. So we need to do more in terms of prevention. Yes, we need to build long-term shelters and places where people can go so they can receive the services that they need. Me and other community leaders have been working for some time now to get more funding at the local level, but also statewide and federally to advance some of these projects that we know we need. And so because of the work of a lot of good people in our community, Ashley Swearingen, Joaquin Arambula, you've heard yesterday that the governor is investing $11.5 million in his next budget for grants that go towards poverty and homelessness here in our community. And so that is such a huge step for our city. And it's something that many of us in Fresno have been pushing for years. But that's not enough. We need to do more long-term. We need to do more long-term in terms of addressing income inequality that afflicts not only our community, but communities all across the nation. We need to have a conversation about income inequality and whether or not our tax structures nationwide, statewide, is one that promotes job creation, that promotes the ability for folks who are of working class to buy all of the good things that we know that businesses need them to buy. So that is a long-term process. I can't do it on my own. We're going to need help from everybody here in this room, everybody here in Fresno. Number two, most important issue is public safety. The most important decision that the next mayor will make is to select a new police chief. I know that there's been talk that the current mayor will be picking the next police chief, but I think Jerry and I are pretty much in agreement that either one of us, whoever becomes mayor, will be picking the next police chief. And it's a big decision. It's a big decision in terms of public safety. It's a big decision in terms of how we police our streets. And I really hope to see a police chief that's going to get in and do the hard work that's necessary to turn around the morale that has been so low there. I work with Fresno Police Department officers on a daily basis, and a lot of them are very frustrated about the current situation. They feel that people don't have their backs and they don't have enough funding to do the jobs that we need them to do. And so we need a leader that's going to go into the police department and really put aside politics and do what's right for the department as opposed to what's right personally for them and their political careers. Last but not least, I want to make sure that we focus in terms of a community on building safe and healthy neighborhoods. I know that many of you in this room were big supporters of the Parks Initiative in the last election cycle in 2018. I was a big supporter. I think that it would have done a lot of good for our community in terms of building the infrastructure that we know that we need, supporting the River Parkway, making sure that we support cultural arts and art pop, and then also making sure that our kids have safe places to go after school to play. Obviously that didn't pass. We are going to have, however, a new opportunity this year. And so me, along with a number of community leaders over the next several weeks, are going to put forward a very detailed plan in terms of where we go from here. And it's a plan that I'm fully behind. It's a plan that I'm asking the community to support. It's a plan, frankly, that I'm asking my opponent to support. It's a plan that is going to, I think, bring the community together. We have a very large cross-section of community organizers, leaders, folks in the arts, people who support parks, people in public safety that are going to get behind this. It's going to generate $75 million worth of revenue per year. It'll sunset in 20 years, so the voters are going to have to reapprove it. Half of the money is going to go to the parks and the arts. The other half is going to go to public safety. It's going to go to the fire department, which we all know is completely dangerously underfunded. 25% of it is going to go to policing, which we know where they need help as well. So it's a project that I'm supporting. I hope that all of you get behind it. It's something, not everyone's going to be happy with it, but I think that it's a good compromise, and it's something that's going to help move our community forward. So with that, I know that we're short on time, and I wanted to give an opportunity for all of you to be able to ask me a question, because I can't run this city. I can't be mayor if I don't know what issues are important to you. But before I do that, I just want to say this. I love my city. I love Fresno. It means a lot to me. I think we need to change the conversation. I think that we need complete and wholesale change here in our city. We can't keep saving the same cast of characters that work downtown at City Hall and hope for a different result. And I really think that we can aspire to be better than just a distribution hub for Amazon and Ulta. But we can do better. We deserve better. Our children deserve better. And I hope to get my message out there between now and March 3rd and hopefully earn your support. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm open to any questions.
I understand there's a move afoot to revise the 2014 Fresno General Plan. And as I understand that plan, a big part of the emphasis was on infilling the parts of the city that are vacant, that need to have housing or whatever. And and what I'm concerned about is, and it does not emphasize going out beyond our borders and building these big developments, which the developers like to do. I understand. Do you know anything about that? Can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. So the city council is having discussions right now on whether, yes, to reopen the general plan. And we had just put the general plan into place back in 2014. We spent millions of dollars getting community input, putting it together. I'm a big supporter of the general plan. I think it's a good document. I believe firmly that we need to do a better job of implementing the city plan, the general plan. The general plan, as it stands now, thank you so much. As it stands now, there's an emphasis there to focus on the neighborhoods in our city that have been forgotten in terms of community neighborhoods. There's an emphasis on downtown and the corridors that lead into downtown, Blackstone as an example. And that is really the emphasis behind that. And so there are folks on the city council that are talking about reopening it. Because I think, yes, you're right, there are some developers that want to continue with urban sprawl and pushing the boundaries of our community further to the north and further to the east. And so personally, I don't think that we need to spend millions and millions of dollars to reopen this initiative. I think we just need to do a better job of living up to its spirit. And unfortunately, I think there was only one city council member that voted against reopening this discussion and spending all of this money. And so, hopefully that answers your question. If I were mayor, I would try to shut that down.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing a little bit about who you are today so that we have an opportunity to get to know you. Your opponent is a big guy in the community, in stature, in where he's been, what he's done. He spends a lot of time at community fundraisers. A lot of people know him, and we're just kind of beginning to get to know who you are. So can you share with us maybe one or two specific ideas that separate the two of you in your vision for the city of Fresno?
Yeah, thank you for your question, and thank you for the shampoo joke earlier. I laughed. We honestly need to do that at our Rotary Club. I think that that one of the biggest things that distinguish he and I, in terms of our vision for the city, is change. I think more forward-looking in terms of what we need to do for our community. I think that local government, the mayor's office, the city council needs to have an active role in building our community. For far too long, we've relied on the private sector, nonprofits to address issues like poverty and homelessness. So for me, I think that we need to do more as a government and as a community of taxpayers to address the needs that we have. And so just as an example, I talked extensively about this new plan that we're going to be putting out in the next few weeks as a coalition of community members in terms of where we need to move forward. I don't think that he supports it at this point, and so I think that would be one thing that distinguishes us. Another thing that I think distinguishes us, and I know that this is a controversial issue amongst a lot of people, but I work in public safety, and I'm a big advocate of legalizing marijuana and cannabis. I just think that the war on drugs, although good intentioned, has really failed. I've seen millions and millions of dollars here locally dumped into that effort. We have a unique opportunity to raise revenue for our city. If you look at the city of Woodlake, it's not even a city, it's a town. They've generated over $100,000 in terms of revenue, sales tax revenue off of this industry. And so we know that it's legal here in California, that people want to do it, and they're just trying to find a place to go. So as mayor of this city, I would make sure that we would regulate the industry, make sure that it's safe, we make sure that it stays out of the hands of kids, but at the same time, take advantage of this huge potential opportunity for new funds for our city so we can build schools, parks, roads, and bridges, and all the great things that we know that we need. My opponent has been all over the place on this issue. I don't know where he stands. He's historically been against it, but I think after our last debate, he's sort of shifted positions on it. And so, I'm very clear about where I stand on the issues, even when it comes to controversial issues. Yes, sir.
Yeah, with regards to housing for the homeless, you mentioned the term long-term, and it makes sense that once people know where the government can place these people, long-term may work, but with regards to keeping them there a long time, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And that's so important. And just another thing that distinguishes me, and I think from my opponent, is he's referenced this this plan that they use in San Diego. The problem with the San Diego plan is exactly the point that you bring up. It doesn't become a short-term place where people can go to get their services and turn their lives around and get educated and get into a job. It has become sort of a long-term shelter situation where people just linger for years and years and years without getting the services that they need. And so for me, the plan has to be different. There needs to be a better working relationship with the county, which we know are in charge of all of the behavioral health and mental health services that they provide to our community. We need to work better with them. We're not working well with them now as the city. So that's number one. Number two, and this is something that I personally won't have any control over, but we need to address income inequality in our country. We have a shrinking middle class, a growing group of people who are underemployed, and we have, frankly, the top 1%. Owning more and more of our national resources and national wealth. And that's not good for anybody. And so I'm a big supporter of the DRIVE initiative here in the city of Fresno. The governor cited it in his visit here yesterday in terms of where we need to go long term. We rank right now 59 out of 59 in terms of racial inequality statewide in terms of large cities. We can do better. And so when we help people at the bottom rungs of our society, I think that it helps everybody. And so in terms of my long-term plan, it needs to be a full-fledged effort to address poverty. Yes, sir.
I understand I'm reading the paper the other day that you raised $9.2 million in your race against Nunez. Congratulations, that's quite a bit of money. But I'm kind of curious how much of that came outside the congressional district.
Oddly enough, I raised more money in the congressional district than the congressman. So that I think informs you a little bit as to where the money comes from. My best fundraising neighborhood, I think, was somewhere in San Francisco, in full honesty, and Nunez's best fundraising neighborhood was somewhere in Beverly Hills. So, that is the nature of politics. One thing that I'm very proud of is the fact that I didn't take any money from corporations. I'm a big fan of campaign finance reform. My average contribution was around $25-30 a person, and those are the people that we like to solicit donations from, because I want to make absolutely clear that I'm going to be working for working people and average people that live in our community, not the big corporations that I think have led us astray. Yes, Bruce.
Have you been able to identify on the homeless situation any other communities, even outside of the U.S., that have come up with a workable solution? You mentioned the San Diego one is not really a long-term workable solution. Has anybody come up with one that's workable?
I think if someone came up with a magic solution, we'd be using it now. And homelessness has been around since the beginning of time. People just not having a place to live, and it's just so frustrating for me to see, we have family members that served in our armed forces, and it's like, we're not even taking care of our veterans, and there's veterans out there on the streets now without a home, without a meal. So what I've seen is that every city is trying something different, and it's something that we're experimenting with right now as a nation, as a state, as a community. We just have to see what works for Fresno, and so what works in San Diego, what doesn't work in San Diego might not work for us here, might work for us here. LA has this rapid rehousing initiative that they've started. I'm very interested to see how that's going to work out. They're pumping a lot of dollars into getting people into homes, but tying strings to their ability to stay there in terms of employment and getting cleaned up in terms of substance abuse. And so to answer your question, and another example, there's a place in Texas that have built these large tent encampments that are clean and safe. And so that really shows us that we don't need to build large fancy facilities to house people long term. We can do some short-term living situations at an affordable rate. What we have to recognize, though, is what we're doing now here in the city of Fresno isn't working. So we can't continue to do the same thing. We have to do something different. And so we have to try different things. We might fail, when we first start, but if that doesn't work, we're going to go on and try something different. And so the $11.5 million in grant money that's going to come here to Fresno, we have to be very careful on how we spend it. We have to be very careful in terms of how we supervise these projects. And we have to remember that these are one-time grants and they're not going to be around long-term. So we've got to get the problem fixed. We've got to get it fixed now before there's an economic downturn. Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, of the $11.5 million grant that is supposedly coming here, what percentage of that is going to be expended on management?
Good question. I get asked that a lot about how we spend our money now in terms of management, how much it goes to people that actually manage the projects. To be completely 100% truthful, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know if it's been worked out yet. It's a new proposal, and I think that they're still sort of working out the details. Yes, sir.
I have two questions. I feel like a lot of our roads are just deteriorating and falling apart.
Yeah.
I want to hear your plans or ideas for kind of our infrastructure. The second question is just where you stand on high-speed rail.
Okay, I'll start with high-speed rail. That's the easier one. I don't think it's been any secret that I've been a supporter of it. I've been very critical about the way the state's obviously managed it and sold it to our state. And actually back in 2008, whenever it was passed, I actually voted against it for that exact reason. I don't think the state has any business operating a high-speed rail. If you look at any other country in the world, it's a federal, it's a national project. And so I've been a very big proponent of making sure when Congress and the president, whenever they get around to it, they invest in America. They invest in projects that will really push us forward, create jobs, and take cars off of the freeway. I think that's good all around. I just don't think that California should be in that business. But we're sort of stuck now. We're stuck in this situation. I don't see how we get out of it without either completely scrapping it or getting federal help. And so that's sort of where I'm at on it. I think that it would be great for our community in terms of raising, I think it would raise property values. But you have to balance that with the issue of affordable housing. But there's a huge potential there for people to live here in the city of Fresno and commute an hour to go work in places like Silicon Valley, Sacramento, or the Bay Area, even Los Angeles. I think that it was well-intentioned, but man, did they mismanage that project. In terms of transportation here locally, there's a discussion right now amongst our city council as to where the SB $1 are going to go. This is the money from the gas tax that California voters passed last year. I personally voted against the gas tax because I didn't think that Fresno was going to get a fair share, and I think that a lot of the money was going to go to to San Francisco, the Bay Area, and Los Angeles. We need to put pressure on the governor. We got to keep pushing him to get those dollars here and our state legislature. And so I see that happening. In terms of what we're going to do with the money locally, my approach would be to put the money to where the need is. There's a desire amongst the city council members to sort of split up the money equally between the 7 different city council districts, but I think that's the wrong approach. We should look at places in the community that have the pothole issues. We need to fix roads that are broken now, because if we spend some of that money in places where roads are fine, we're creating long-term infrastructure problems down the road where roads are literally falling apart. So my priority is to put the money where it's most needed. And we got to pass Measure C when it comes up for a vote again. Yes, sir.
What can a city do about the problem of poverty?
Well, I'll be honest with you. There's things that we can do, but poverty, the city's responsibility are generally related to infrastructure and public safety. Those are the two sort of big responsibilities of local government. For me as a science, somebody that follows politics, the emphasis has to be on the way we as a society approach the issue of job creation and fairness. And if I could figure out the magic solution to poverty, I'd win the Nobel Prize. But I think the answer to your question is that local government can't do it on its own, because you have people moving in, people moving out, people fleeing California, and so there's a lot of things going on there, and so we need everybody's help. We need to work and partner with our elected officials who work in Washington. We need to partner with our elected officials who work in Sacramento in creating a tax scheme that promotes small businesses. I mentioned the fact that my wife's a small business owner. I watched her start her business. She's in the point where she's blessed enough to expand and hire additional people. In Fresno, 80% of the non-government workforce are employed by small business owners. I'm just frustrated that I feel like we roll out the red carpet for big companies, but we don't do the same for small businesses. And my wife's providing a really, I think, needed service to our community. I think that a lot of people, maybe people in this room, own small businesses, and you do a lot of good work for our community. You employ a lot of people. I just think that there's never been a real strong emphasis in supporting that. And so if we can make small businesses succeed, I think we can begin to hire more people at the local level. I think more people will be employed, more people will buy stuff. As mayor, I want to make sure that we really roll out the red carpet for those folks. They're the backbone of our economy. No question.
How do you view the minimum wage?
I think that people need and deserve to be able to make a living. I think it was a huge mistake for folks to basically try to peg Fresno to LA and San Francisco in terms of a minimum wage. I think that would be devastating for our local economy. Not good. And so in terms of minimum wage, I don't know what the right number is, but it needs to be different from some of the big cities, because we're not like Southern California and the Bay Area. Our cost of living isn't the same. And so for me, whatever it is where people can support their families and make a livable wage is what I would set it at for us. Yes, sir.
What's your opinion on regarding the sanctuary city?
I don't like this question, because people ask, do you support sanctuary cities, yes or no? To me, that really dumbs down.
I didn't say you support us, in your opinion.
No. So let me get to that. I'm going to get to it. So people always ask, and they ask Jerry too, where do we stand on sanctuary cities? And I think that just oversimplifies the conversation. And so for me, as somebody that has come from a family of immigrants, and I have many friends that are in the immigrant community, we have folks that were brought here by no fault of their own, by their parents when they were young children. Many of them served in our armed forces. They have businesses, they pay taxes, and they go to our schools, and they're part of our community. And so I want to do whatever I can to make people feel safe. In terms of a local government, our job is not to enforce federal immigration policy. And let me say one other thing. In my line of work, the hardest thing for me to do, Bruce, are we okay on time?
We got 2 or 3 more minutes.
Okay. One of the hardest things for me to do as a prosecutor is to prove my case at trial beyond a reasonable doubt. The only way that I can prove my case beyond a reasonable doubt is if I get witnesses to come in to testify. Many witnesses in my case have no legal status or have family members with no legal status. And so when they're being told that, Fresno's not going to be a sanctuary city, they don't feel safe, their families don't feel safe, and I can't do my job. And so for me, I just want to communicate to people who live here that if you're law-abiding, if you're not going out there and committing crimes and you're being a good member of our society, I'm not gonna come in and put your kids in cages and separate families. I think that is the wrong approach, and I've been very upfront and honest about that. And so I know that doesn't go back to answering your question about is this going to be a sanctuary city? We're a sanctuary state, I guess, under state law. I'm obligated under the law to do certain things as a prosecutor. Let me give you an example of how this whole immigration system is broken and how frustrating it is to me. I am prosecuting a man right now who brutally assaulted a female in a parking lot, and he was undocumented. During the middle of my prosecution, ICE came, arrested him, and deported him, and now he's walking free somewhere in Mexico. How is that just for the victim in my case? How is that fair to anybody? He totally escaped prosecution because our federal immigration policy is broken. And so I'm just as frustrated with the situation as everybody else. I think Washington needs to get their act together. I think both sides need to come together on the issue because it's hurting all of us and families here, more than any, I think, other place in the country in terms of the undocumented immigration status and situation.
I've heard you talk a little bit about some of the litigation against the city over the years, and I'm just curious, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've seen in terms of legal settlements, and are you aware at all of how Fresno compares with other cities in California?
Yeah, so I have been very critical of my opponent in terms of his management of the Fresno Police Department, in terms of how much money we as taxpayers have had to pay out as a result of his time there. And I know he says that that's the cost of doing business. Police officers get sued all the time, but we have to remember that many of these lawsuits were levied against him personally in terms of racial and gender discrimination, in terms of sexual harassment and other things that go on, that have gone on. And so, I know that there's an emphasis in this race where people want me to stay positive, but I can't ignore the legal liability and the potential of having that continue for another 4 years in the mayor's office. And so I have been critical of my opponent in terms of his behavior and conduct there. And here's the other thing. So we're clearing a lot of these officers in these police-involved shootings, and many of those lawsuits, some estimates put it at $30 million over the last 18 years. $30 million is a lot of money. And we've cleared a lot of these officers, and so why aren't we, I'm a trial attorney, why aren't we, if our officers are doing the right thing out there, why aren't we fighting this in court? Why aren't we taking these, we're not a piggy bank for people who want to come out and sue government and make a buck. If our officers are engaged in appropriate conduct, then let's go out and defend them in court. And if they're not, let's get rid of those officers. And I think that we can do a lot more in terms of mitigating our losses in terms of the taxpayer, and I'm going to continue bringing attention to that fact.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That was informative and to the point, and we appreciate you coming. We support as a club Lowell School. That's one of our projects downtown. And so we ask every speaker to sign a book, and this will go in the Lowell School Library. So the book is What is the Constitution? We the People.
Awesome.
No, my boss is Bob Whalen. He's a city council member for Clovis, and he reminds me every day to honor the Constitution, and so I think this would make him happy too.